Mitchell Farrell, Mr. Rue, and Mr. Buscaino. And we do have two we have general public comment and multiple item cards for Antonia Ramirez and Corey Schmidt. So if we can go ahead and take that now. You
Ladies
have
and
2
gentlemen,
minutes for the multiple items and 1 minute for general public comment.
thank you very much. Thank you. Ladies and gentlemen, I deeply, deeply grieve for the killings of two wonderful officers. One was Joseph G. Solano, a sheriff's deputy, and the last one is LAPD officer Juan Jose Diaz, and a 24-year-old young man. These individuals left the department with honors, integrity, and great balls. They stood up for something. They honored the badge, and they were off duty. They stood for something. They cared for the city. They cared for humanity, and they had self-respect. They wanted to quash, destroy every form of criminal activity, even the tagging on the sidewalk. And this poor young man, LAPD officer, may he rest in peace, died with honors. He didn't censor, kick anybody, or play the political ass-licking game. This man died with honors. May he rest in peace. That's what I want, a city attorney like that who can fight the criminal
Okay, you need to stick to the items at this point because you've used that for general public comment.
Public safety, that's what I want. Public safety, we have none. That's why we're voting out
You
the
need to stop
Democrats.
yelling, ma'am, and you need to stick to the items.
If you did your job, Monica, we wouldn't be happy
Please
to
stick
yell.
to the items.
Yeah. Number two, how do you identify a truck confiscated firearms seized in LA? With what gizmos or gadgets? And if that is so, then why can't you track all the weapons that are seized and taken by the dangerous gangbangers? That's number two. Number three, city attorney, how will you enforce this new amended ordinance since you can't even prosecute Mickey Mouse? Number four, I think this is an equitable road to due process rights for the appellant. I wish we had due process rights for the speakers who are constantly being censored and thrown out. And number five, if we had real just public safety, we wouldn't have these two homicides in Crenshaw. And we wouldn't have to put out $75,000. Get ready. We're going to need the $75,000 to quell and combat the oncoming riots, because those riots are coming. And number eight, a donation of $250,000 from the police foundation to this program. It's a waste of money until you start taking care of the problems of gangs. Get rid of all the gangbangers. Deport the motherfucking wetbacks and gangbangers. Pick up all the junkies and put them in rehab until you put the mentally ill and get them properly treated, and until you house all the law-abiding citizens, and until you house our military veterans. Will we have public safety restored? But not until you get the motherfucking out Democrats. Put Republicans on the bench. Number nine, Board of Police Commissioners will donate $18,000. That's wonderful. Those rookies need the money, and it's going to be going to a house. I don't understand that. But anyway, Officer Morris and Officer Martinez are leaving. God damn it, you deserve to stay. We want you on the bounds
Thank you.
program.
Your time is up, Ms. Ramirez. Thank you. Corey Schmidt.
So I just want to open with how I usually open, just saying apologize to everybody that has to hear everything, but it is our First Amendment right to free speech. So, okay, so to the item agenda, or the agenda items. Okay, let me try to look at you guys a little bit better. Okay, so number one, in regards to day permits for residential valet, I say yes. Two, tracking confiscated firearms, I would also say yes to that. Number three, in regards to firearms must be locked or in a locked container. This one was a little controversial to me. I actually say no to this. I like the idea, but I don't like the constrainment in case of problems and you need quick access. If something's happening, you gotta go run and grab it, you gotta lock it, you gotta get, a lot of time that could pass where you might get injured in the process. But what I do think should happen instead, rather than just saying no, is I believe that education and licensing would actually be the answer. Kind of like a car. I was kind of having a conversation with someone about this. You got to attend classes, you got to pass an exam, and most importantly, I think you should have to pass an emotional strength physical exam, kind of like a simulator, and you sit there and you're put in a situation and you're forced to react. And if you pass that test, then I think you should be able to wield. Because just because firearms and guns in general, just they wield so much power, and there's not enough people who are responsible enough with that power. So I just think that we should be filtering for emotional stability and that kind of thing. Just demonstrate competency with that responsibility. So in regards to number 4, establishment of a Board of Appeals, yes. All the donations from 6 to 8, 8 to 12, I say yes. I'm not sure what she was talking about. There might be some merit there. 16 to 17, grants, yes. And 18, schooling to prevent crime and increase police performance, I also say yes. And that's it.
Thank you so much. And so that concludes our general public comment and our multiple agenda item comment cards. And colleagues, I'd like to recommend, unless there's an objection, let me know, that we take on consent items 1, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 13 through 18, and 20.
I have questions on 3.
Okay, so we'll pull 3 from that list.
No objections.
Okay, so the balance of those items will be taken on consent without objection. And the clerk want to read those items?
For item number 8.
I'm sorry, no, those are the consent items. So items 1, 4, 5, 6, 7, 9, 13 through 18, and 20?
Very good, I got that.
We take those on consent?
Yes.
Do you need those to read them in the record, or you're good?
We're good.
Okay, thank you. And that brings us to item, I know 8 and 10, we have technical corrections.
Yes, we do. Okay, for item number 8, additional language to be included. That the mayor and city council authorize the controller to appropriate $235,000 to the police department trust fund, number 885/70P807, department number 70, for Harvard Park Community Safety Partnership Program, and therefore reimburse fund number 100, department number 70, account numbers and amounts as follows. Account number 1012, salary sworn, $90,000. Account number 1092, overtime sworn, $145,000. For item number 10, the following requested language is included. That the mayor and city council authorize the controller to appropriate $235,000 to police department trust fund number 885/appropriation account to be determined, department number 70, for South Park Community Safety Partnership Program, and therefore reimburse to fund number 100, department number 70, account numbers and amounts as follows. Account number 1012, salary sworn, $90,000. Account number 1092, overtime sworn, $145,000.
Thank you so much. And without objection, those will be adopted as amended. And now that brings us to item number 3.
Item number 3, city attorney report and ordinance relative to amending Los Angeles Municipal Code section 55.21 to require all firearms located in a residence to be kept in a locked container or disabled with a trigger lock.
Okay. Ms. Kelly? Mr. Buscaino?
Good afternoon. I'm Deputy City Attorney Soraya Kelly.
Thank you, Madam Chair. Thanks for holding this. Just had a couple questions. I remember having this discussion in 2015 on the storage of guns in a private dwelling. Can you just share with us some of the examples of how a person can be found in violation of this proposed ordinance? I do remember responding to calls for service where you have a domestic violence case, where you have accidental shootings. Some of these shootings resulted in fatalities, unfortunately, based on what I saw in the streets. I just want to know any other ways in which a person can be found in violation of this proposed ordinance.
One additional way, which I think was one of the sort of the impetus, one of the impetuses for the amendments, was that there was a case where a child had a firearm, brought it to school. His residence was checked, and it was discovered that the firearms were not locked. Or with a trigger lock, and the city attorney's office was able to charge the parent for the handgun that was not properly stored, but there were also rifles that were not properly stored, and our office was not able to take action or impose any charges for that firearm.
Appreciate that. And also, I remember in having this discussion that we wanted to preserve or exempt police officers or reserve officers, and want to make sure that's still preserved in this proposed ordinance.
That one is not preserved, but that's because the existing ordinance was
Includes it, right?
I'm sorry?
It does already include it, the existing ordinance?
The existing ordinance does not include that exemption. I understand. I believe that the previous iteration did. Let me look.
I believe it reads with one of the exemptions, City of LA to keep unsecured handgun within a residence unless the handgun was stored in a locked container or disabled with a trigger lock, 2, carried on the person of the owner of the handgun or other authorized user, or 3, within close enough proximity and control that the owner or other authorized user can readily retrieve and use the handgun as if carried on the person. So owner or other authorized user, does that include a peace officer?
It includes any owner, any authorized user, but there's no specific exemption for a peace officer.
And then what are we going to do if and when, I'm assuming this is going to be approved by council, what's the game plan on informing the public that this ordinance is going to be approved in the city? How are we educating the public?
Well, I understand that they're already, that the city attorney, Mr. Fuhrer, has already begun sort of education, especially with respect to parents. And as stated in a letter that dated August 13, 2019, which was included in this file, the LAUSD board adopted a resolution to inform parents of the responsibility to safely store any guns in accordance with the law, and that those steps have been taken in coordination with the city attorney's office.
Okay, in the state law, can you just quickly reference, is there already state law that dictates storing how you should or should not store a gun in the personal
yes, there are some state law provisions on point with respect to storage.
So there's already okay, so this is just more of a local ordinance, correct?
Correct.
All right, thanks, Ms. Kelly.
Great. Colleagues, any other questions? Okay, seeing none, and I think we will go ahead and adopt. Thank you so much, Ms. Kelly.
Thank you.
Thank you. Without objection, that item will be adopted. And that'll bring us to item number 2.
Item number 2, motion O'Farrell-Krikorian relative to identifying and tracking confiscated firearms seized in the city of Los Angeles.
Thank you, Mr. O'Farrell.
Well, first of all, Madam Chair, thank you so much for bringing this to committee just 2 weeks after it was introduced. It had been in the works for a while in terms of introducing this motion based on the fact that there are now more mass shootings across the United States than there are days in the year, every year, annually. And tragically, right after this was introduced, the Gilroy mass shooting occurred, which is in direct relation to one of the main purposes of this motion and what I would like to explore. We know that the AR-15 assault-style rifle used in that shooting came from the state of Nevada, where it was purchased legally by a 19-year-old. We know that California has strict gun laws. The state of Nevada does not. And that's just a very tragic example. But we also know that guns, weapons in high numbers make it across state lines on a regular basis and are used in crime or attempted crimes and gun crimes. And what I'm trying to get to the bottom of is how we can track those, develop a system to track where firearms originate from when they're used in a crime, and how that could possibly inform us. We also know this is not the city of Los Angeles, this is Riverside, but a CHP officer was killed just, I think it was yesterday in the middle of the night, by an AK-47 assault-style rifle, and that gun was assembled with ghost parts. The investigation is ongoing. We're not going to find out exactly the origin of that gun that was assembled, but I think it illustrates, even though that is Riverside and the other one was in Gilroy, we know that guns used in crimes that kill people in Los Angeles come from other states. And so what I'd like to do is hear the report, Madam Chair, and then we can ask some questions.
Terrific.
Thank you.
Thank you. Gentlemen?
Hi, ma'am. Captain Paul Espinoza. I am here for Commander Ann Clark from Detective Bureau and also Captain Tony Odo from Gang and Narcotics Division. But I did bring the subject matter experts who can speak intelligently to your very good concerns. To my right, I have Detective Ben Maida from the Gun Unit, Lieutenant Eric Bixler, and Lieutenant Jesse Kane, who are the experts on this, and I'll turn that over to Detective Maida.
Good afternoon, Councilman. Councilman Rodriguez.
Good afternoon.
Stiano. So, LAPD, when I was reading some of the requests here, have a lot of requests from ATF, and that is to obtain their trace data. Unfortunately, the Tyhart Amendment that protects ATF from giving other organizations this information to be published in other sources is protected, like I said, under this Tyhart Amendment. The LAPD currently has task force officers that work with ATF, and we have been successful in identifying firearms that come from illicit gun dealers, including unlicensed gun dealers, and bad apple dealers within the city or county. Our oldest case is Boulevard Guns, where the LAPD and ATF seized 6,500 guns as a result of the identification of trace data provided from ATF to LAPD. Our most current case was the Science case, and you may have read about the 1,000 gun seizure, where ATF once again provided LAPD that information, and we were successful in taking that gentleman out of business. So therefore, we don't have any gaps within LAPD and ATF. A lot of the guns that come from crime guns are from California. As a matter of fact, several years past, about 65% of the firearms that were recovered on the street were from California, and that is burglaries, unlawful transfers, or any other means that people get the firearms. But they are sold to residents in California, and in all honesty, because of prior to 1991, where guns were not mandated to go through dealers, there are still a lot of firearms that hold a time to crime of over 13 years. So the LAPD can release all the information that is requested, or as best as we can release it, from internal LAPD databases. We are currently developing ways to track ghost guns. We can tell you whether or not a firearm has been registered to residents in California, but we cannot identify the gun stores or the states that provide those firearms to us. We can obtain it from the ATF, but in current time with Councilman Krikorian, I think this attempt was already made, and it severed our relationship with ATF to the point where we are now required to ask permission from Washington, D.C., just to get these trace data reports from ATF, the comprehensive trace data reports. In the past, because ATF was able to provide it for criminal investigations, it was an easier working relationship. So, I hope that we do not taint that relationship any further with ATF.
Let me ask you, sir, if you don't mind. So, why would an effort to keep guns out of the hands of people who shouldn't have them jeopardize our relationship with ATF? Aren't they charged with keeping Americans in general safer and freer from gun crime? So what's that about? I'm not clear on why this harms their cooperation level with us.
They are in a strong relationship with us, like I said. Just within this year, we identified this unlicensed gun dealer that netted us 1,000 firearms.
And that's amazing. I'm certainly not criticizing the cooperation and the work and the accomplishments of these busts that I see on a regular basis. That's phenomenal. But do your searches just stop beyond the state of California? So is there some sort of wall that prevents us from finding out if a gun or a firearm used in a crime in Los Angeles comes from another state? Is there a barrier?
Not at all, Councilman.
Okay.
If there are firearms that are coming from out of state, ATF does liaison with us, not only within our task force out of Glendale or the LA group, but they also assist us in Nevada, New Mexico, Arizona, and other neighboring states where we do see some of this, of these firearms coming into the state. So we continue to work in both ways, but like I said, most of our illicit gun dealers or most of the firearms that are coming out recovered in crime guns are coming out of California, and they are legally purchased, and then they are just distributed with the disregard for proper registration.
Okay, and do you track all these firearms, and do you identify which states they come from if the crime happens in Los Angeles?
Yes, we can track any firearm as long as ATF has that data available.
And that's the roughly 35%, because you said 65% of firearms used in crimes here come from California.
Correct, sir.
So it would be about 35%. So what I'm getting at is you have states that have open carry, like Texas and Nevada's concealed carry, but other states where you have organizations like the NRA bending over backwards to make sure that combat weapons are available to anyone with no background check and no age limit. And what I'd like to know is if we're already collecting the data that would help us determine the magnitude of how that negatively affects and harms California and victims of gun crime. And I would think that there is a universe of crimes where we could establish that nexus. And that's the basis of this motion.
Well, I'm going to tell you that we fought this battle with ATF, and they had sent counsel from D.C. to state their reason for not disclosing that information to make it public. It can continue to be used for criminal investigations, and it can continue to be given to the LAPD's gun unit, which we work at, Gang and Narcotics Division. But in order to request that information, it has to be approved by ATF. Sir, we can give it a try, once again, but LAPD cannot voluntarily produce that information without their permission.
Thank you. Could this information, though, be obtained from city attorneys, district attorneys, our state attorney general? Is there some sort of ATF barrier from sharing that type of information?
Yes, it's called the Tyhart Amendment.
And that's a federal
That's a
law.
federal. Yes.
Does anyone know why that barrier was put in place?
Some of the history or some of the reasonings was because they didn't want third-party organizations suing gun dealers to go after them and maybe help their cause or get funding for their sources. But as a organization that, as a detective that has been involved in fighting gun trafficking for over 16 years, we've been extremely successful with ATF providing that data and identifying these bad apple dealers that come within the state, out of state, or even unlicensed within our state or even out of state. So we're doing pretty well, sir.
So these bad apple dealers, they'll just get firearms from wherever they can get them, whether it's across state or online or wherever they can possibly get them. That's just where they'll get their weaponry that they can then sell illegally. Is that right?
Yes, to some degree, yes. I mean, the percentages that I saw from 17, were averaging under 10%. And like I said, California's source was 65+%. I think the biggest issue right now that we have is our ghost gun epidemic that ATF has identified to be somewhere in the 35-36% plus. We've seen it for over 6 years in the rifle, the AR-15, the AK-47 platforms, and now, unfortunately, we're starting to see it in the pistol, which is the most prevalent in crimes in gun violence. The revolver being number 1, the semi-auto being number 2, and a shotgun number 3. Unfortunately, the assault weapons don't represent the mass destruction, with 6% of them being related to crime.
They just get all the attention.
But when they do, when they are involved in shootings, they're massive casualties, unfortunately.
Yeah. Is it your belief that, and this is my last question, Madam Chair, is it your belief that in order for the online sales issue to change, that would require federal legislation?
Absolutely. But California currently, even on the online basis, needs to transfer a firearm from that online service, whether it be within the state or out of state, to a federal firearm licensed dealer to be picked up for the purposes of a background check.
That's state law currently requires that.
Correct.
And to your knowledge, is that being followed adequately?
Yes.
Okay. Thank you.
You're welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. O'Farrell. Mr. Bruscaino.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and thank you, Mr. O'Farrell, for leading this discussion and this motion before us. I do recall over the years we've had gun buyback days in the city of LA. Is that still happening?
Yes.
I haven't seen or heard of one in a long time.
Our most current one was just this past May. It was probably the lowest netted cachet, which gave us 204 firearms when we were averaging 780.
Right, I remember we collected a ton back in the day.
We've collected 16,500 plus firearms since 2009.
So what do you attribute that decline to?
My experience, sir, is the lack of publication, the lack of information. It seems to be a trend that social media is a way to communicate with Angelenos, but the average person that houses a firearm that's unsecured or people that are not on social media, because that's the trend of people that come to a gun buyback to surrender these firearms that are under mattresses, in closets, and dresser drawers that are unsecured. So we need to inform, our affiliates from Channel 2, Channel 9, Channel 7. I'm not, promoting any of them, but that's
maybe
what
we can work with the department and our media relations unit to help promote that. And Mr. O'Farrell, if you recall, as part of the incentive was no questions asked, right?
That still holds true.
It still holds true, but when we collect those weapons, is there any tracking or tracing at all? We say that in public, but
we only check them for stolen or lost or institutionalized firearms to return to their rightful owners. We do not trace those firearms because they are all clustered in one area, and it's not fair to represent a cluster of firearms recovered from a location where we have planned an event.
Thank you. Thank you.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Rue.
Thank you, Madam Chair. I really want to first thank Councilman O'Farrell for bringing this very important motion up to address gun violence. I would like to suggest a friendly amendment, if we could, because actually in your motion you already mentioned that LAPD should work to assist the council in identifying improvements in the state and federal law that make sense for residents of LA and the state of California. If we could actually move that into an actual action item, asking them to help us list all of the currently existing related firearm federal and state bills that strengthen or check or inspections on firearm possessions across borders. So you alluded to it, but you didn't actually make it a report back. And that in the discovery, if it turns out that there are no state or federal legislation, if we could ask the CLA to provide a resolution seeking an author or sponsor for the bill that would strengthen inspections at the state border for firearms.
So it's my understanding that that information will return in a report back anyway.
Okay.
But I'll accept it as a friendly amendment because I think it's forthcoming anyway, the reporting that you're asking for.
Yeah.
But if it's not crystal clear, then it certainly can be.
Yeah. And if there is no bill currently existing in the state or the federal government, that we ask the CLA to seek an author so we can introduce that legislation.
Right, or take a look at what the current gun safety bill is that is stuck in Congress, and Mitch McConnell's refusing to hear it. Yeah, we can take a look at the details of if that element is contained in that bill as well.
Great.
Okay. So we have this. Were there any other additional questions, comments? No. So seeing none as amended, we will go ahead and adopt this item. Thank you, Mr. O'Farrell, for bringing this forward.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Great work.
And we received cards on, we have a multiple item speaker card for, hold on. So I have 11, 12, and 19. Mr. Spindler.
Yeah. Look at the squirming we see here. See, you guys in this committee.
Can we start the time, please?
Of course you can start the time that you never give me. And by the way, thank you for putting the meeting back up when you took it off. See, you're playing with instrumentalities that you know nothing about. You don't know the rules about playing with the things you play with these little cops and your little ATF and your little access and your little waivers and everything. So you don't understand.
You can speak to items 11, 12, and 19, please.
Yeah, you're nothing but just a stupid little local fucking city board is all you are. Your job is just to do things like 12 and little fraudulent things like that. Stick to what you're good at. You're good at stealing public funds. Just stick to that, and you got your $250,000. You're going to steal that because the cops go to for a 501c3, they launder their money through that, and then they give it to you, and then they get tax donations, and just keep laundering the money. Don't have people falsely arrested. Don't play games like you played with me, because that's going to stop everything. And you don't want to stop stealing. You want to keep stealing. They want you to keep stealing so they can go get their fucking pensions and move out of state. See, like 19, Purvis system. We don't give a shit what Purvis system is. No, none of us know what it is. Purvis what? So just keep doing what you're doing. Just keep approving everything and giving 1 minute to speak and violating the Brown Act and just keep keep doing exactly what you're doing, because you're going to make the FBI a lot happier. See, they're very pleased today the way you handled everything, cashewing all my public comment. Please keep it up. And then they'll indict more than 4 of you on the council. That's what they're hoping for.
Thank you, Mr. Spindler.
Have a nice day. And can I have my stuff back? You got
Okay,
something
thank
that
you, Mr.
belongs.
Spindler. Your time is up. Okay, Mr. Clerk, if we can have items 11 and 12 called together, please.
It belongs to you. It belongs
Mr. Spindler, you're disrupting the meeting.
Thank you.
It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter anymore. See, it's all over. It doesn't matter. It doesn't matter.
Mr. Spindler, stop disrupting the meeting. Thank you. Item 11 and 12.
Item number 11, Board of Police Commissioners report relative to donation of $100,000 from the Los Angeles.
This is your final warning, Mr. Spindler. Please stop disrupting this meeting.
To be used to enhance the Los Angeles Police Department's marketing and recruitment diversity efforts. Item number 12, Board of Police Commissioners report relative to the donation of $250,000 from the Los Angeles Police Foundation to be used to hire a professional marketing and recruiting vendor to enhance the LAPD's marketing and recruitment diversity efforts.
Good afternoon, gentlemen.
Good afternoon.
Good to see you. So do you want to kind of share where we're at right now with the overall strategy that we're deploying here and what the resource is going to be used for?
Thank you, Council Member. Just as a quick introduction, I'm Deputy Chief Martin Baez, and I'm the Commanding Officer of Personnel and Training Bureau, and with me is Mr. Vartan Yayigian, who's the Commanding Officer of our personnel group. Just to give you a very brief overview, this $350,000 combined is really part of a larger budgeted plan of $1.3 million in order to address our diversity hiring goals. Over the next 5 years, we've projected that we're going to be losing over 400 African American police officers through attrition, over 190 Asian Pacific Islanders through attrition, and over 600 women. In order to achieve and maintain our status in regards to our diversity hiring goals, we have come up with a pretty robust marketing plan that really encompasses addressing, updating technology, having partnerships with the personnel department, going into a robust marketing strategy utilizing social media, and also looking at vendors that are either contracted to the city and also, as in a bigger picture, even going out to RFP in order to address the 7-step process in our hiring methodologies in order to accommodate the recruitment that we are looking at. This $350,000 is really slated for a couple of things in regards to that. In regards to the $100,000 that we've identified, we're looking at spending about $82,000 in Google ads that are specifically targeted towards a demographic that we're looking at. I call it geofencing, but I think the proper term is like a geographic, demographic, targeted specific area. We're also looking to spend about $18,000 on Facebook advertisement and working with marketing groups and advertisement firms in order to really look at the niche that we're looking to fill. These are estimates because we're looking on best case scenario industry standards as to the packages that we're looking at and what we're looking to accomplish. In regards to the $250,000 that we're looking to spend from the Ballmer Group, that was the donation, $150,000 is slated to work with the personnel department to update our testing process to make it more user-friendly, and it could be more of an online testing platform in order to facilitate our candidates. I want to say about 60% of our testing that we do is pocket testing, and once we update it, once we work with the personnel department to update our testing process, we would actually free up resources to actually do more hands-on, one-on-one contact to bring in more of the demographic that we're looking at. And then we have an additional $100,000 slated to help us with the personnel department in partnership to identify vendors, to identify efficiencies, workflow through our 7-step process, in order to facilitate the candidates that we do bring in. Because I think in previous conversations, council member, we are very much concerned, as you are, that we'll bring people to the door, but we want to make sure that there is a pipeline that facilitates our goal of getting candidates processed and hired under 90 days. So that is basically the overview in regards to this specific funding that we are requesting your approval as a donation, as a larger part of our marketing strategy in addressing our diversity and our hiring needs.
Thank you so much. And I just want to take a minute to thank you both and acknowledge all of the effort that has been put towards reforming the hiring process as well. These funding streams are very important, and they so often we are always seeking additional support and resources. Making sure that we're judicious in our approach to reforming the hiring process is a way of respecting those contributions. And so I want to thank you for your work in helping to identify where our shortfalls are in creating an accelerated process so that we don't lose qualified candidates from the pool that we're seeking. So I just want to thank you and acknowledge you both for your work and the whole team that was put together to help identify using very off-the-shelf technology tools to identify where the problems are in our process. But again, my hat's off to you. I was very impressed by the work that you've been engaged in and really appreciate it, and appreciate that you heard the concerns about making sure that we were reforming that process concurrently as we were going out and really invigorating our recruitment process to have a diverse force that is reflective of our city family, of our residents. And so, colleagues, do you have any questions?
Thank the Los Angeles Police Foundation. This is wonderful. Yeah.
Mr. Buscaino,
Good.
anyone?
Thank you.
Great. So I think with that, we will go ahead and accept the donations. And thank you both very much for your work. We really appreciate it.
Thank you very much, council
Thank you.
members.
And so, colleagues, that now brings us to item number 19.
Item 19, CAO report relative to proposed contract with Purvis Systems, Inc. for hardware, software installation services in connection with the replacement of the city's current fire alarm alerting system.
It's fire day.
Hi, good afternoon. Would you like to introduce yourselves?
I'm Samantha Ju from the Office of the CAO.
Good afternoon, Madam Chair, council members. I'm Scott Porter, Chief Information Officer for the Fire Department.
Great. Would you like to give us an introduction?
Sure thing. The proposed agreement between the Fire Department and Purvis Systems is a 2-year agreement beginning on July 1st, 2019 through June 30th, 2021, with 3 one-year options to extend. The contractor will provide hardware, software, system development, and support services for the city's fire station alerting system during the replacement and integration phases to the city's existing 25-year-old system. The FCS, also known as the Fire Station Alerting System, is used to alert and dispatch fire department resources and consists of various customized hardware and software components. They've now become obsolete, which requires the use of this agreement. The services will provide for a gradual replacement without interruption to services. Funding is provided through Municipal Improvement Corporation of Los Angeles, also known as MICLA. Council approval of this proposed agreement is required because the contract may exceed 3 years, and maximum allowable compensation is approximately $3.7 million. Fire department's here for any questions you may have.
Thank you. I just had a quick question. So is this kind of a standardized system that's widely utilized by other fire departments in terms of the system that's being pursued in this?
Yes. It is. It's a great question. What's interesting is the system we're replacing is essentially a homegrown system that the city, ITA, and the fire department developed many years ago. The component parts of that system are literally maintained on benches today. And the challenge was to replace it with a full commercial system all at once, all in with the age of some of our fire stations would have been a really tremendously expensive and risky project. So what we're doing is a bit of a hybrid. So the answer to your question is yes. We're going to replace those components that are homegrown or built on a bench with commercially available modern fire station alerting pieces. But at the same time, and one thing that's unique about this particular contract is we're going to continue to maintain some of those things that make our system unique and allow it to function in ways that are really important to the fire department. So the integration with our CAD system is going to be maintained. The way we do station alerting is going to be maintained. Yet those essential parts out in the fire stations that need to be modernized will be using commercial equipment. Once that's done, we'll have the capability to continue to expand this depending on if the fire department's needs change at some point in the future. This particular project is to get us all the functionality we have and get off of these components that we frankly can't even buy
And
parts
sustain
for.
anymore because they're just antiquated.
That's correct.
Got it. And so on of the $4 million, does that cover all the phases of the project?
It's everything that we need to get us to the point where we've got a completely revised fire station alerting system, modern system. What it doesn't do, and the fire department several years ago had tried to sort of do a wholesale, we're going to replace everything, tens of millions of dollars, lots of capital construction. It doesn't really replace the essential sort of bells and alarms inside the station. So this is everything from the dispatch center out over the network, alerting the station, but using what's currently in the station for like the bells and alarms. But we need this piece in order to then modernize those pieces. So as we build new fire stations, for example, we'll have lots of options. Today we don't have those options. So the answer is yes, it will get us complete, and we could stop here and say we've got a safe, modern fire station alerting system, but it is also a platform upon which we expect that over the years we'll want to continue to grow and enhance.
So in the process of upgrading the system with all of this newer technology, how do we mitigate any disruption in our current system?
It's a great question, and that was really the big challenge with this idea that we would go out and just replace everything all at once. And we actually struggled quite a bit kind of trying to design what's the right compromise. The initial phase of the project, which is underway, it's almost halfway complete, was just dealing with the telecommunications network, which was really the sore point of our system that fails quite often. So we're moving on to the city's investment of a high-speed fiber network. The city already invested in that. It's out at all the fire stations, and we're moving on to that. But in terms of this particular solution, and we went, we did a lot of research. When we found Purvis, they're a company that deals with very large fire departments, FDNY, Houston, Miami. But the unique thing about them was they were willing to work with us to customize a solution so that we actually are going to be implementing this system while our current system is in place. So as we go to switch out new stations, our current system will continue to operate as is. Our CAD system will operate exactly the same way. So the integration that we're going to have is going to allow us to sort of safely move to this. And one of the nice things about that is we can do a couple of stations, really shake it out, then do a couple of more stations and sort of incrementally move in that direction rather than one day we flip a switch and sort of hope it works. Right. So the safety of the current system is really quite critical, and one of the reasons why this particular company was willing and also had a history of being able to do that sort of customization.
So when I hear customization, I get nervous.
Yeah, for sure.
Because then it kind of saddles us to a longer-term commitment that we don't always necessarily can break away from. So how does the system not do that? In fact, I mean, how do these systems over the course of the last 40, 50 years, how have they evolved? And when was, in terms of the age of our current system and through that evolution, how often does that change?
So let me clarify the customization part, because I share with you that that word is troubling in IT. All of the commercial systems, Purvis being one of them, any commercial system, everything that sort of sits in the fire station and beyond the alerting piece, so this is like the automated voice, the way the lights go on and all of that, that's a commercial piece, and The company will be providing support, maintaining it, enhancing it, sort of all the benefits of commercial. The custom piece to any of these systems is how they integrate with your dispatch system. And that's the part that we'll be working with them on, so that we actually, because the fire department has a custom dispatch system, we actually have a lot of features of our fire station alerting system that a lot of commercial systems don't have, and we want to maintain those. But that's more of a software capability, and the actual hardware and equipment that does the alerting and keeping it modern and up to date is really why we want to do that with a commercial company. So I'm really confident that, the commercial side of this, which is, this is a product, it's off the shelf, we're not changing, we're taking advantage of, we're not asking them to do anything they don't normally do, except for that one piece where they integrate with our CAD system. And we want them to do that in a way so that it doesn't disrupt our operation.
Terrific. Colleagues, are there any questions? Okay, seeing none, then I'd like to recommend that we approve the CAO's recommendation, and without objection, that'll be the order. Thank you both
Thank
very,
you very
much.
much.
Appreciate it. And I believe that clears the desk.
There's a desk.
Thank you so much. We are adjourned.